Hey folks, to celebrate the launch of our massive new punk asset pack for Affinity Designer, I thought I'd put together an easy tutorial on how to create a punky, grungy, distressed style poster using some of the assets from it. All the assets used in this tutorial are available as a 100% free download, so check out the description for the link and do take a peek at the full pack while you're there. Here's the files you'll get in the download. There's the start and finished versions of the Affinity Designer files. You'll find our punk mini pack here, which is a handpicked selection from the full pack and contains everything you need to create the poster. It's a mixture of vector and bitmap assets, plus a couple of vector brushes. Finally, there's a folder with the poster copy. This contains a text doc with a list of band names we'll use, another file with URLs to download some of the fonts I'll be using if you'd like to, and also an image from Unsplash by Sumtail, which we're going to stylize and push even further in Affinity Designer. For this poster, I want to strike a balance between it looking overly rough and handmade, as a lot of authentic punk artwork would be, and it being a clean, clear, professional design. The goal is to effectively borrow elements from the punk aesthetic and integrate them into a strong design in a stylized way. Often as a designer, you'll receive finished assets to lay out, but as this is a fictitious festival poster, we're going to kick off with creating a simple festival logo lockup. Okay, so I have the start file open here. It's just some of the copy that we're going to use is already in here. I'll organize the files as I go, but for now, let's kick off with doing the main festival logo lockup. I'm going to create a layer just to get a little bit organized. I'll call this festival logo. So we just want Punkfest, shift select Dublin, and yeah, that's it. That's everything. I'm just going to hide all this other stuff for the minute and just focus on the festival logo. So for this, I want something that's big, bold, brash, has a kind of a stencil look to it as well. I'm just going to separate these out and give them appropriate weighting. So I want punk to be the main thing, then fest, then Dublin. And quite often with any design, it's like weighting is so much of the design process that, you know, the festival lockup for the logo, that's going to be one of the prominent things on the page. But within that, there's different weights of the elements that make that up too. It'll make sense once I start putting it together. Okay, so for the main font, I'm going to choose Montserrat. And I'm going to go for the black version. I love this font because it's really clean, clear. It's not overly stretched. It's not overly compressed. It's just got great legibility, and it's just perfect for what we're going to do. And obviously we'll punk it up a little bit to make it look a bit more interesting and not just like a nice, clean sans serif font. So yeah, I want to go to my character panel and reduce the spacing a little bit between the lines. Okay, and for Fest, I'm going to use one of the other fonts that I've installed. I believe it's called Dharma. Yeah, Dharma Punk 2. So this is nice. It's kind of got like the cutout stencil letter look. I'm going to increase the kerning on this as well. Not by that much. That should probably do it. So I'm just going to drag these out so that they are approximately taking up the same width as the punk lettering. And then the Dublin, I can just use Montserrat. This doesn't need to be anything flashy. Again, I'll go with the black version, and I'm going to click to make that all caps. So let's reduce the weighting of that down so it's not as prominent. That's basically the lockup that we're going to run with. So I'd said that I want to do something paneled. Command Shift and square brackets to put that behind. Now, I know I'm going to use this on, I want to go with a predominantly black background and kind of go for a negative look. So I'm going to put that in now just so that I can see what I'm doing. And I'll go up to my swatches here. You'll see I'm using global colors, but I'll come back to that in a second. Okay, so we've got our black background. I'm just going to drag that under the layer and lock it. Now, where's my Dublin? Okay, make that pink. So just quickly, if you haven't used global colors before, they can be useful in some situations. To create a global color, let's say I have this color here. I can then go to the swatches panel and click on the drop-down menu and choose add global color. It's probably cut off the recording, but it's there. Then I can drag the color sampler over here. That'll pick it up and then tap it to add it into the global color swatch. Then you can give it whatever name you want and then click add. So now you've got a custom color that you can apply to anything in the document. But the real benefit of this is that you can edit it, and wherever you've used that color, it's going to change it. So it takes a little bit of the pain out of putting a design together. You might go into a couple of colors at the start and then realize, oh, I don't actually like this, and you want to change it. It's as easy as changing the color globally, and everywhere it's used, it will update. Okay. Delete that color because we're not going to use it. So let's tidy up this panel a little bit. So there's a few ways that you can approach making this panel itself look a little bit more jagged. I mean, you could use a vector tool to kind of do a jaggedy outline, or you could take something like this and, for example, you could add one of our brushes. So I'm just going to click to add a brush stroke, and you can see that that just kind of gives it a nice inky look, and that's absolutely fine. That'll do a job. Let me go back. Now, if I open up the assets panel, yeah, we've got our mini assets here. So we could leave it as a basic rectangle and then just drag in some of these assets, and we can recolor them. I'm going to control drag. So let's say we'll have one there like that. And let's say that this will be black, so that it's like a mixture of adding some roughness and also subtracting some roughness in other places as well. And the great thing about these assets is that they don't just have a hard edge. So you're able to get the use out of both sides. Like there's no hard clipping on them. So it's just very useful. So that's another way of doing it. I think what we're going to do is we're going to use yet another asset. If I hover over here, there's some dense ones as well, which are a lot larger. Oh, no, not that one. So this is one of the big dense panels. So we've basically taken a lot of the work out of needing to create something that's ragged yourself. So it's just ready to go, just a big giant panel. So let me delete the basic rectangle. I'll put this in, and now I'll just resize this however I want it. So I'm looking to kind of keep some nice clear gap or consistent frame around it. Again, the punk style can be a little bit forgiving because it doesn't need to be perfect. If you're doing a corporate brand logo, this would probably need to be more mathematically done. Let me change the color of this to white as well, just so it jumps out a bit more. Okay, so it's starting to look okay, and I might supplement this with a few extra touches of these individual elements. So I'll just drag and drop a couple on, I'm gonna color them, just to create a bit of extra bleed and interest popping out of them. Okay, don't need to go too wild, but I think that should do it. And now I'm going to do the same for the punk letters themselves because they look just way too clean. So I'm going to drag in a couple. I'm going to set them to what the background color is. So it looks like it hasn't printed right. It's kind of corroding away. And you don't need to overdo this, but just enough to make it look interesting. When I'm working with halftone stuff as well like this, I try to approximately match the size of the dots so it looks like it was all kind of came off the same machine. And maybe let's add a smaller one in here. Hold down Shift to constrain the resizing so that proportions stay the same. And maybe I'll have another pink version that is eating into the rounded part of the P. So yeah, I mean, you can keep going with this and keep adding stuff, but I know that at some point I'm going to want to add an overall texture that's going to take off some of the super clean look at this, and we'll probably do that soon enough. I find that having just plain black can look a little bit digital and stark, but we're going to do stuff that's going to add some grain and some noise and lift the black levels up so that they're not completely black. But yeah, so I think that's going to pretty much do it for this festival logo. We can obviously come back and dirty it up a little bit more. Maybe I'll add a bit of halftoning in here just to fill in this space a little bit. Again, if we're doing a corporate logo, we probably would look at lining the letters so that the U would line up with the K. But because we want it to be a little bit loose and punky, I'm not going to do that. But adding a little something in the corner here is going to just help balance that very slightly. Okay, so I'm going to stick with this for the minute. I might even... got a rogue piece here. Let's delete that. I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to group that. That's all on the festival logo there. So that's it. That's the festival logo part done. Next up, I'm going to, I think, sort out the punk visual. So let me hide this layer for the minute. I'm going to create a new layer. This is going to be the punk. Okay, I'm going to go to my assets folder and let's see, we've got this stock image in here in the copy folder. So I'm going to drag and drop this in. A useful thing to know is that if you place an image into an Affinity Designer document, it's embedded in it. But if you drag and drop it in, it actually links to it, which means that the original image stays on the disk file. And if you make any updates to that, it'll also update within the document. If you actually go into Window Resource Manager, you'll see any imagery that you have in it and the placement, whether the bitmaps are linked or whether they're embedded. Could be a useful tip for somebody. Okay, so I know on this poster, I don't need the whole image. Like I don't particularly like the bottom half or the baseball bat part. Just a bit aggressive for a festival poster. But all I'm going to do is focus in on this dude up here. So obviously the photo quality is really good. So we want to really make this look a lot rougher than it actually is. We're going to degrade it. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the guy out. And to do that, I'm going to create a vector shape and then place the image inside the vector shape. Now, doing cutouts, there's a lot of different ways that you can go about doing it. You know, when you see tools like Photoshop with how you're able to extract the subject and stuff like that, it can make it very quick and easy and clean to do. But because I want all this to be very stylized, I'm going to do a kind of a stylized vector shape. So yeah, I want to lose the guy's hair. So I'm basically going to switch over to the pen tool, which is P. You'll see it over here. And I'm just going to draw around the guy. Now, I know I'm going to lose his hair. I don't want to use this hair. I want to put in my own. So I can kind of cut that out. So I'm just going to start adding points to create the shape. So let's see. Okay, I'll start around here. So let's click and drag. So it's already on a curve. And click and drag. Click and drag. Can use the arrow keys if I need to nudge any of the points in a particular direction. Now you can see I'm not going for like a super glossy, classy cutout. I'm just going for something stylized. There's another reason for me using this cutout method as well, because I'm going to make use of the stroke that I create going around them, which we will get to very shortly. So it's just the same process. Just click and drag. It'll create the rounded parts. If you just like click once, it'll keep it a straight line. And I'm not too worried about it being absolutely perfect on the edges. Again, I want it to be a little bit rough. And I know he's going to get cut off towards the bottom of them as well. So I'm just going to come straight across. And it's more than likely I'm not going to need to use his left side at all, because of the way I'm thinking. I'm going to try to crop it in the poster. For the sake of completion, I'll just go around this side as well. Okay, so we have our curved shape done. I'll just put a little stroke in that for a second so you can see it. So we've gone around the outline of the guy. I'm going to get rid of that. And now if I drag onto the very left side of that curved shape and drop it in, it's going to cut out our hero here. And yeah, no, I think that looks fairly clean. If I click on the curve, if you need to edit any of the curves, you can use the A shortcut, the node tool. which lets you go in and select individual nodes, and you can change the curve handles or change the curve, or you can delete them if you want. If you need to add another one in, just double click while using the node tool. Okay, so this is working. I want a copy of this curve, so I'm going to press Ctrl J just to copy it, drop it down, and just get rid of this image. So now I just have a copy of this curve, so I'm not going to do anything with it just yet. Just to have it there, I'm just going to select these layers, give myself a bit of space to work in, and I'm going to give the guy a stylized mohawk as well. So this is going to be a new curve. So let's say start somewhere around here. I'm just going to draw kind of a fin sort of shape. I'll come back and refine this a bit in a minute. Color on it so I can see what I'm doing. Let me move this down behind the guy. So yeah, I'm going to use the A tool to refine it. Now, before I completely finish this bit, I'm going to do some of the processing on the image so that it blends in. I'm going to have this mohawk in black. So I kind of want to crush the blacks and the highlights in this as well, so that this will match up and appear seamless. Let's have a look at how to do that. I'm going to hide my little mohawk for a second. I'm going to go down into the curve containing the guy. I'm going to add some adjustments to this. So the first thing I want to do is add HSL, which is hue, saturation, and light. And I want to suck all of the color out of this. So the saturation shifts, drag it down. So now there's no color. I'm going to select this layer again, and again I'm going to choose levels. So this controls the black levels on it. So I want to, you can push this quite far. So I want to push anything that's kind of close to black, like in the hairline. I want to push that down to actually be black, and then I'll drag the white percentage. So that will push anything that's kind of a light gray more towards the whites, which will give us some of the effect that we're looking for. So I'm trying to find a balance between not killing the detail too much but giving us a kind of a really nice stylized look, especially on the cheeks here, how it starts to blow out a lot of the detail that's there. So I guess it's a case of picking what you think looks good to you. So let's try something like this. And just for a little bit of extra control, I'm going to again select the image, and I am going to change the exposure very slightly. So I just want to lift everything up. Just a touch. Okay, so I think that'll get us up and running. Now I'm going to turn off, hide this background layer just so I can see this a bit clearer. And I'm going to turn back on the layer for the mohawk. And now I'll make this black. So I'm going to bring this back above using Control Shift and square brackets, the right square brackets. And I'm just going to go in and use the node select tool just to come back and make this follow his hairline. So you can see now where I have crushed the blacks on the main photo, that it now kind of blends nicely in with the vector part. I think I might just try to fix the shape of this a little bit. It's a bit much. Looks more like a gnome hat than a funky mohawk. Now, how I do this in the end will depend on the placement on the page and how it gets cropped. But I think that should be fine. This is where we get to see why I have duplicated the original cutout curve. I'm going to also duplicate this hair. So I'm going to select a copy of the hair layer and a copy of the outline of the guy. And if I come up to my Boolean modifiers, I'm going to click Add to combine both of these. I'll rename this layer Outline. Now, if I turn back on the background, I'm going to take my outline, make sure it's underneath our guy. And now if I give it a stroke color, this is already starting to look pretty good, but I'll go a step further and I'm going to make this outline a bit more inky using one of our brushes. So yeah, I think the more raggedy one will do the job. So that'll give him a little bit of separation from the background. Let's just add a little bit of stylization to him as well. Let me grab one of these assets. Again, use the global colors. You can play around with the different blend modes to see which ones you like with how they interact, but I'll just leave that at multiply, I think. Let's have it bleed onto his jacket a little bit, maybe make it larger. And let's see what other shapes we have. Let's try this one. Maybe linear burn is the way to go. Let me just resize this. Okay, I think, yeah, I might revisit the levels that I did on the image just to get a little bit more white back in the eye, but I like how crushed the blacks are on it. Okay, so let me make sure that these are all in the punk layer. And just while I'm at it, I'm going to select these and group the punk in the punk layer. Okay, so now we've got the festival logo and we've got the punk. Now, if I go to resize the punk, you'll notice that the stroke size isn't changing. So what I want to make sure I'm doing, while I've got all this selected on the stroke panel, there's a scale with object. If I check that, now if I change the size of it, anything that has a stroke will be scaled proportionately. So that's a really, really valuable and useful tool, tip to know. Okay, so let's get this dude looking a bit bigger. And I've got the festival logo now. I want that to be bigger as well. It's already starting to come together a little bit. I think the next thing we'll look at is adding some of the other details on the poster. Okay, I'm just going to hide my background again for a minute. I'm going to turn on all of these other elements. Okay, so we don't need our color codes. We don't need these color swatches. Okay, green room. So we're going to say green room presents. And we're going to keep that up at the top. Probably do it as part of this punk lockup. The URL. We'll probably stick that down as a call to action down the end. We've got a date as well. Let's put that in. So I think one of the things that I want to do is to kind of push the norm of this a little bit further. And I'm going to actually put things at a slightly different angle as well, just to create a bit of extra interest. And that will kind of help with starting to shape up the layout. First, let's just refine a few of these elements. So, okay, we're going to say green room presents. So I'm just going to add in a text. Let's do this in the pink. And for the font, I want something clean, like Montserrat again. Let's see, let's try semi-bold version of it. I'll reduce this right down. I think just to increase the legibility at the small size, I'll increase the kerning. And I think this would be a good point to use another one of the assets. So we've got a whole bunch of tapes that we can use. So I think I'll grab the masking tape. I think that'll be cooler. When you rotate things, if you hold down shift, it'll constrain it to 15-degree increments, which can be useful. It's definitely going to come in use very shortly, but I'm going to do this manually. I want this to go behind the G icon of our logo. Let's see. Okay, I'm just going to change these to white so I can see them. So I can bring my background back in. Make sure the background is all the way at the bottom. Lock it. Visible. Great. I'll select my green room logo type, make that white. I'm not sure I love that font like that. I'd like something very slightly more condensed, but let's leave it for the minute. Okay, so another trick that I'm going to do on this is I'm going to select the layer, but I'm going to add an effect. And if I go down through the ones that are available, I want a color overlay. And you're able to change the color mode, the blend mode, and the color that's used. If you want to, you can use this to great effect on entire layers with pretty much anything in it. You can change the color and just make it completely solid fill. But we don't want that. We want to use this. And if we use the linear burn mode, it still keeps some of the shadows and the shapes from the tape in it. So this is exactly what we're looking for. This is going to be the Green Room Presents logo lockup. I'm just going to get this how I want it before I do anything else to it. Bit of spacing between everything. I think that will do for now. I'm gonna select this and group it, and we'll call it Media Presents. Okay. Yeah, I want something funky for this as well. So another one of the fonts that I've given you a link to is Aristotle. There we go, Aristotle Punk. So I think that's, yeah, it's a strange font. It looks really cool with some lettering, other not so much. It's not very usable. But I think for the purpose of a date, this is going to look good. And yeah, let's see. Let's use another one of our brushes on this as well. Yeah, I'm going to switch to the pen tool. You could, if you have a tablet, you could draw this. Or you can just simply kind of drag out the nodes. So I just want it to look like it's loosely circled. I'm going to select a stroke and make it our global pink. I'll use one of the other brushes. And now I'll just move that. Use the A tool, select the nodes just to give a little bit of breathing room around the lettering. Maybe I'll rotate that a little bit. Okay, that should do the job for that. And let me select that, group it, rename that as date. Okay, and let's see. Let's change the font of this as well. I'll make that all caps. To be honest, I probably like to use a more compressed font. You can use whatever you would like. I happen to have Din here, which I know works pretty good. Increase the kerning on this as well. Just help a little bit with legibility, especially when it's all caps. And I'm going to do something else with that, I think. Add a little corner tear here using another one of our assets. Okay, so this is starting to shape up. I'm going to grab from the tutorial files. Let me open up this band name list. Okay. I'm going to copy this in. T for text tool. Okay. And I'm actually happy with that font, I think. Let me zoom out. So it's quite a long list. So I'm not going to use this in a literal, okay, here's the festival lineup. I'm going to treat this more as a graphic and just kind of have it framing off the side of the page. So I think I can actually start to position some of these elements the way I'm going to use them. So I'm going to put a rotation on a lot of these, and I'm going to hold down Shift and do it in 15-degree increments. So all of these little groups, I'm going to make follow the exact same thing, including the text. Reposition our punk. Maybe let's get the festival poster a little bit, or festival logo a little bit bigger. I think, yeah, I don't mind our punk overlapping a little bit. I'm kind of looking for lines as well, so I kind of want the left edge of the tape to more or less match up with the left edge of the punk logo. date. I think we'll go somewhere around here. And let's have a look at adding in one of our corner tears. Go back over to the assets. Here's our tear here. So yeah, so I'm going to want this something like that. And we're going to rotate the URL a little bit as well. Keep it to the 15 degrees just so there's a little bit of uniformity amidst the chaos. I'm just going to select the pen tool and I'm just going to draw a colored panel that will go underneath this page tear. Just fix this node here. Okay, I want to switch it from being a stroke to the fill. I'll use the control and square brackets to move it up and down levels. And now I'll select the torn edge and the curve. I'll do the same. Oh, actually, no, I'm not going to do that. And I also don't want them in the punk group. But I do want the logo to be above the torn edge, so it's visible there. Okay, I'm going to use the brush tool this time. I'm just going to loosely draw a line. Yeah, I'll use the inky edge brush on it. Choose the stroke size a little bit. Use the square brackets left and right to make a stroke bigger or smaller. If you're doing a print poster, you'd probably want to be aware of where the frames are, or if the poster is going to appear inside a literal frame, and just keep more clearing distance. If this is going on something like social media, you can go a bit closer to the edge, but reposition the stuff like this. Maybe make the URL slightly bigger. I'm going to go to the character for this. I want to space out the band names a little bit more. I often look at posters and, well, any designs really from different zoom levels as well, because it can kind of give you an idea of how something is working, and make sure you can see your weighting much clearer as well. So, you know, obviously punk is the thing that jumps out, and fest, which is what you want, the main things, but everything else is there. I think the weighting is fairly decent. Maybe I'll make my punk a little bigger. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to move some of these bits into another layer just to keep organized. Let's just call this text and logos. Yeah, so I'm just going to take everything that isn't the punk or the festival logo. So I have everything in there. Okay. Some of these last touches are some of my favorite steps. I'm going to go into the assets again. And let's throw on a paper texture. And this is folded paper. Let me just, for the time being, I'm just going to put a solid color behind it so you can see it a little bit better. And I'll just create a new shape, put it in a random color. Okay. So when you drag out the assets, all the assets for the paper fold textures and the grunge textures, they're all set up with the correct starting point, blend modes and opacity. So everything will be working right out of the box, but we're gonna change to a more aggressive mode, go to a linear burn. That's going to hit the colors a little bit nicer. I'll just hide this paper thing for a second. I'm going to drag in a grunge texture as well. I'm just going to rotate and just fit that in so you can see how it adds a nice bit of texture. But we're going to do a little trick with this. Instead of it being like a standard multiplier linear burn just to dirty it up, we're going to do something different with the grunge layer. Let me delete this now. So with the grunge layer, I'm going to actually change this to a lighten and drop it right down. So what you'll see happening here is the grunge texture is coming through, but it's taking the starkness out of the black, and it's allowing us to see the folds a lot clearer. I might increase the texture for the paper folds. Now, from a design perspective, you could quite easily rotate that to fit in and then scale it so that the whole thing looks like that. But I'm gonna leave it like this because I think it adds to the contrast of the angle of all the lettering and the actual design itself. So, I mean, I think you can see that this has pretty much come together and is pretty much there. Let me just play around with the lighting a bit. No, I think that's okay like that. So I've made a textures layer. Let's leave those in there. Let's try to spell it right. I'm gonna lock that. Don't need to worry about that. It's debatable whether you could actually add these textures in at the start when you're designing, as sometimes it can help to see what you're designing into. It also stops you from trying to overcomplicate some designs as well. By which I mean that if you feel that something looks too flat and plain, you might add too many elements in to make it look more interesting. So by having a texture in place, there's already some interest there, which means you don't have to try as hard to be able to get everything to look nice and cohesive. I think the only other thing I'm not really loving is how the textures have darkened over the logo. Now you could, and maybe I will do that. I might just take that Green Room Presents and just drop it on top of everything else. Just so it's not getting lost and faded, and it'll kind of stick out a little bit. Now, and I might go into the tape and also go into the effects, and I might just change this color a little bit to make it match up a little bit better because it's not under all the texture, so the color isn't getting slightly changed. So this will just make it a little bit less saturated. So I think that they are a better match now. So yeah, so I think that's at least good enough for a first draft. I think I would debate maybe trying to get a little bit more light back into the punk now that we've added the texture to them. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to go down and find that image layer, and maybe let's have a look at the exposure and a little look at the levels. There is going to be a little bit of grayness to it anyway because of the texture, but we want that. And I think that those little tweaks should be it. Okay. And I think one last thing I'll do, I don't like how this green thing interacts behind. So I'm going to drag this inside the outline curve so that it cuts off smoothly at the edge. And that's it. I'm going to call that one done. So yeah, so please do take a look at the full pack. It's got a ton of content in it, and it's basically everything you've seen there multiplied by literally hundreds. So yeah, so go check that out.